Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our episode of Freeish. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Amanda. I'm a student leader from the Osceola campus, and today we're going to be talking about how to help and move forward.
Hello everybody, my name is Adriana, and I am a student leader over at the Lake Nona campus. I'll start by introducing our panelists, and then we can move on to our questions. First, we have Mr. Blenman, who has an associate's degree in criminal justice from LaGuardia Community College. He also has a bachelor's of science in human services and community justice with a minor in counseling at John Jay College for criminal justice. He also served in the military for 7 years, and we want to thank you for your service. We also have Professor Ragland, who is a professor here at Valencia on the Osceola campus, and he's done so for about 9 years. He teaches things like U.S. government, state and local, and peace studies. He also is on the tenure track and is a grad student at UCF. And lastly, we have Donasia, a student leader over at the Osceola campus and now a Valencia alum. She also started the idea of Freeish, and we want to thank you very much. Amanda, you can start with question 1.
All right, first I wanted to give props to Donasia. Whoop whoop, alum, let's go. Okay. Well, Mr. Blenman, this question is for you. What is one important thing that you would want everyone who is watching to take away from this conversation today?
Okay, so hi again, everybody. One thing I would want individuals who aren't persons of color to take away from this movement is the need for accountability. When we persons of color use the term Black Lives Matter, it is often meant with deflection instead of reflection. People tend to get offended and counter by saying all lives matter or blue lives matter, so on and so forth. We are saying that all lives don't, we're not saying all lives don't matter, but we are saying that ours at this point of time isn't valued as the same as our counterparts. That's what I'm saying. This movement is not an anti-white movement. It's not anti-police brutality or anti-unfair treatment. It is time for individuals to admit that the system is unfair and unjustly targets Black and brown bodies. There needs to be reflection and understand that the world isn't a safe place for all. And because it isn't, we need to make a positive change to ensure it is. That's why we don't have to teach our children survival the same way we were taught or we have to teach ourselves. With reflection and accountability, it comes change. It becomes with reflection and accountability, it comes change because we are able to see things and are able to identify the common problem. It takes steps to fix it. This isn't an us against them. This is us against a system design. It's an us against a system design for our demise. A system that needs changing, whether people choose to accept that or not. Just to talk about what I mean by deflection instead of reflection. What I meant by deflection instead of reflection is that when issues of injustice against Black and brown people are brought to the forefront, non-personal colors tend to deflect, meaning they deviate from the current problem by countering with an issue they find to be more important of an equal importance. Instead of supporting Black Lives Matter, they counter with all lives matter. But if all lives matter, we wouldn't be fighting so hard as we are right now. Understand what I'm saying? So police brutality against Black people is met with the notion that Black on Black crime is far more important issue. But there is no such thing as Black on Black crime. Let me say that again. There is no such thing as Black on Black crime. It is simply crime. The deflection dissolves then of accountability and makes them feel as though the issues we think are important are minuscule. What the BLM movement, Black Lives Matter movement, calls for us is reflection. Choosing to understand that race plays an important role in policing. Choosing to understand that while all lives may matter, right now Black people lives are being put in jeopardy. Choosing to understand that while all people may not be racist, racism still does occur. Deflection blinds you from seeing the bigger picture and the main points. Reflection starts with acknowledgement and progressive steps towards the change. That's how I feel about It's I said a lot. I'm sorry, but I'm passionate, and that's what I feel like people can take from this movement.
No, of course. You brought up really excellent points, and really, I think you really helped open up that perception of the reflect instead of deflect, because I didn't really think about it like that. So that was a very cool point that you brought up.
Thank you.
Is there anything that Donasia or Professor Ragland would like to add before we move on?
No, honestly, he got it all. But what I did saw on Facebook was, why did it take George Floyd's death to really look at the issue? Like, we keep hitting the snooze button for 400 something years, and now we're waking up, this is a problem. So honestly, it has to be that we need to step up, and knowing that the system is broken. There are people that have suffered and died because of the system. And if anything, this is a moment to step up and say, okay, what can we do? And how can we help? So that's what the whole thing's about. Anyway.
I wanted to add on to Mr. Blenman and Mr. Nasia's points. Can everyone hear me pretty well? So going back to Mr. Blenman, I love what he said. First and foremost, you mentioned that you were John Jay alum. I went to John Jay for about a semester, then I went back to Brooklyn College. And I also have a friend who teaches, I don't think he teaches, but he works over there at LaGuardia. So I used to be over there oftentimes, but it's good to see a fellow CUNY. But going back to what you said about with this argument of Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, one of the things I think people miss with this argument here is that Black lives and Black bodies were never of great importance, right? And we see this in history. The times when Black bodies were of value was during slavery, right? And when Black bodies were considered to be property. But other than that, Black bodies were not of importance. So, and it's been like that throughout history. So if we go after the Civil War, if we look at Jim Crow, we can look at even, current times where there's discrimination in housing and all of these things that are happening and that we see. Black bodies, Black lives have never been important. So when we say Black Lives Matter, it's not a rallying call for extremism, right? We're just saying that Black lives are important too, and that Black people have given to the society, right, in so many ways, right? Besides free labor, we've given in so many ways. We've contributed to the society in art. We've built this place up, and yet and still we need to let the world know, let society know that we still carry a lot of, we're valuable. We are valuable. And I just wanted to tag on to that, but great stuff from Blenman and Donasia. Thank you.
Thank you for so much. So the next question is that from stereotypes to stigmas our society still holds today, what is one thing that you feel affects you the most? And maybe some recommendations or solutions to maybe combat these stereotypes and stigmas.
It's interesting with and I love this question. It's such an awesome question. But I think oftentimes the way in which Black people are viewed, and keeping in mind that stereotypes and stigmas have been around for generations. Stereotypes such as Blacks being lazy, that they are criminal, that they are not intelligent. These things have been around for a very long time. It's very it's very hard to deal with, to be completely honest, because I'm sure that we all have our own personal stories. For me, it's as simple as going into a department store, right, or a clothing store. There are a few things that can happen, right, and a few things that do happen. So, number one, you might get a salesperson who will greet you and then will continually ask you if you need assistance. And to me, that tells me that she's probably, or he is probably, um, uh, probably just watching me and making sure that I don't steal anything, right? On the flip side, you'll get some who will not say anything to you because they feel, well, they probably don't have any money to buy anything anyway, right? So it's these stereotypes that are very harmful, and keeping in mind and thinking about these stereotypes and how they are formed. Well, we have a sense of like how other groups of people are, right? As we grow up, we are influenced by friends, we are influenced by family members, we're influenced by religious institutions, we are influenced by education and schools and teachers and so forth. We're influenced by our parents, and some of their opinions we take with us, right? And besides all of that, some of what the media puts out, if they put out these images of Black people who are always getting arrested, Black people who are always committing crime, then if they're like that, then maybe all of them are like that, right? And we develop these ideas, right? These racist ideas, and we generalize and put everyone into this one box, and we say they're all criminals, they're all uneducated, right? They're uncivil. My advice is to always prove them wrong, always. And we're doing a great job at doing that, right? So one of the things that we are doing, right, we educate ourselves. We choose to go to higher education to increase our social capital. We choose to act on our morals and our good character, right? So we constantly show them that these stereotypes that they think we are not. And anyone can add to that.
Especially being a Black woman, you get so many stereotypes. Like, all we do is care about our hair. Of course, the baby mama stereotype. We have the dropping out of college stereotype. And honestly, my advice is ask me before you judge me. Ask me, talk to me. Like, don't assume anything. Like, I'm not a dropout. I don't have kids. Like stop it. Like, yes, I love my hair and I take care of it. Don't touch it. But there's a reason why, because I always thought my hair was a crown, because my ancestors, went through the stages of their hair, and they represent beauty. They represent greatness. So if anything, being a Black woman is hard, but at the same time, it's nothing but an honor. And I just ask you to ask me about something before you judge or assume me.
Yes, I agree with everything Dr. Ragland said and Donasia said. Just to add on to it, the stereotype that I'm a criminal, or the way I look, the way I dress, I'm gonna do something bad or do something against the law. Just like Dr. Ragland and Donasia, we all come with plenty of accolades. You know what I'm saying? When you do see me, you don't see the military vet, you don't see the bachelor degree holder, you don't see the stuff I had to go through to get where I'm at now. All you see is the Black man. You know what I'm saying? That affects me greatly. Just whether it be walking to the store like Dr. Ragland said, or just walking the street and doing a regular routine I do, and they see this the guy with the hat and the tattoos. Now I know, and I love art and I love expressing myself and so on and so forth. So, and I think we can help that by identifying stereotypes that are prominent and working till you learn them. Is a way you can decrease microaggressions, because the individuals, while the individual will be able to identify the prejudices they have, whether intentional or intentional, because not all is intentional, and I understand that. And they can push further for education to have more knowledge as to why the stereotypes are incorrect that we all face. By doing that, it will also keep them accountable, because now they know about their microaggressions and they can also correct themselves and their other counterparts. Like, yeah, check yourself, man. I understand where it's coming from, maybe intentional, but not all people of color are like that. Not all people are like that. Not all people that's not a color are racist, so they might mean something, so on and so forth. It works both ways. So I think that's a perfect thing to check ourselves.
Well, all your responses were absolutely amazing, because it's as simple. The options that y'all gave were just as simple as just asking a question. And I think that's what a lot of people today kind of forget to do. They kind of judge right away, and they don't take the time to, like, hey, how are you? Or what are you doing? Or, what is it that you like to do? People don't want to get to know. And this is just talking in general too, as well. People don't want to get to know others, like, as freely. They just go, and they go with their own, prejudgments in mind sometimes. So it's important to be able to just ask the question, and it's great to prove them wrong. It's an amazing feeling to prove them wrong. But it's also great to point out to people, hey, what you said wasn't cool. It may have been by accident, but let's try not to have that happen again. So you guys, those were amazing suggestions, and those were great. I loved it. So, Miss Donasia, your question. Can you provide some suggestions on how to re-educate / train individuals on the use of microaggressions? What are some resources for students to become aware of these types of microaggressions? And if you could, give examples. And gentlemen, if you know of any examples, you're more than welcome to give them as well.
Read a book. There is more to our history than Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. They did great. They were amazing, but there's more to it than what you think. So the microaggressions, look up why there's a reason behind those. Get yourself educated. We have the internet, we have Facebook, and then you have people. You have professors, you have historians, you have people who are into history. Talk to them. Get to know who we are, why are we like this, and why do we celebrate our Blackness so much. So honestly, educate yourself by picking up a book and doing your research.
If I can second that of what Donasia said, I completely agree 100%. It's as simple as picking up a book and educating yourself. I think we are living in the age of information. And even if reading is not your thing, I mean, there are audiobooks, there are documentaries, there are movies that depict real events. So I mean, there is literally no excuse to not educate yourself, right? You have to educate yourself on microaggressions. One book that I read, that How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. He talks a lot about racism, racist ideas. He delves into history about racism. And he also mentions the ideas behind microaggression, where the term came from, and how he doesn't really use the term microaggression. He says it's basically assault. So when someone is microaggressed, they're basically being assaulted. So I would recommend that book. It is an excellent read, and lots of information in there.
Mr. Blenman, do you have anything before?
I agree with everything they said. Definitely educate yourself. Educate yourself beyond the school setting. A lot of schools don't educate us on the appropriate things. I remember doing plenty of projects. I remember doing a project on Christopher Columbus, and I'm never gonna get into that. But but never doing projects on important, you know what I'm saying, Black leaders until it was February. And then there was one project and it was so small that I don't remember it, but I remember everything about Christopher Columbus. So I myself had to educate myself to understand where I come from and why it was like this and why is it still like this to this day. So definitely I agree with both panelists. Definitely educate yourself, read a book, watch a video, do what you can to understand exactly what's going on.
Thank you so much for those answers. I definitely agree with Donasia also. It's as simple as reading a book. When I was little, my sister is Black and so is my stepdad. So it was very different, the teaching. So like I would go to school and they're like, hey, what's like your favorite like historian? Because we had to do a project. And of all things, I chose Mary McLeod Bethune. And I did a project on her, and it was something that I was very fascinated by. And everyone's like, why this? Why not, you know, pick a president or something? And I'm like, but why do we have to like just pick like what's in the textbook? Like go read and educate yourself. And like I went to the college and I've been to Tuskegee and all those stuff. And it's like it's very important to me to just like educate yourself. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you guys. The next question is, what advice were you given to navigate your experiences as a Black person? And that goes first to Mr. Blenman.
Personally speaking, my advice I was giving, honestly, my parents coming from a Christian background, it was more so pray about it, talk to God about it. And so I would say, I have two things I would say. What would be that I didn't really get would be teach your kids the law. Teach your kids how to talk to law enforcement properly. As bad as it sounds, it should be some sort of dialogue when it comes to people of color and law enforcement, because we don't have the same type of conversations. Unfortunately, we don't have the same conversations, and my parents never really taught me that. They were under the assumption that if we keep them away from the streets, if we keep them away from law enforcement, that he will never have to encounter it. Unfortunately, they were wrong. I received my license. I drove by myself plenty of times, and I became encountered with a lot of racist law enforcement. You know, so it could have been me. Like many of the videos, horrific videos we've seen, it could have been me, because I didn't know how to properly talk to the law. I didn't know how to properly show my hands, and when they ask me for my ID, I'm reaching for my ID. You know what I'm saying? Fortunately, it wasn't me, but it could have been. Another thing I will say for the kids is, or kids growing up, or people watching this that have kids, I will also say seek counseling. I think that's very important. Many Black and brown people only seek answers from the higher power, that they truly believe in. And although I don't disagree with that, and I am a true believer, I also believe as people go through so many traumatic experiences that we need counseling as well. PTSD in the Black community at this time has only inflated, and we need to learn to talk about our problems. When we go through stuff on a daily basis, you don't only get PTSD from going through stuff personally, but you can see a video of how somebody went through that looks like you, that looks like me. Understand what I'm saying? And you get PTSD like that. So yeah, definitely pray, but seek counseling too, because we really need that. We're dealing with things, we battle things up so much that we don't know how to really deal with our problems. So that's what I feel like as we should teach our kids for future reference, or people that do have it.
Taking back what he said, because of course his parents taught me the same thing, and my parents taught me the same thing. But at the same time, someone said, you can love Jesus and still go to counseling. And that's one thing about the Black community. One thing we always said was Black people don't go to counseling. You know, we handle our own stuff. No, go get counseling, go seek counseling. And if the advice that my parents gave me was know who you are and whose you are, so it had to be know who you are, know where you came from, but at the same time know that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that you were meant to do so much more, because that's what God called you to do. So anything and everything that I've encountered in my life was that phrase, know who you are and whose you are.
If I can add to this discussion here, I think both points are so amazing. Um, Going back to uh, advice that others have given, I think the advice that I was given was advice from friends on how to, say, handle police, and it wasn't the best advice. So I definitely agree with Mr. Blenman. The fact that our experiences being of the Black race is quite different than any other race, right? I deal with a paranoia every time I get behind the wheel, right? So every day, even if it's just going to the store, even if it's just going up the block, if I see the police in my rear view, then I get a little nervous. I'll turn down the music. I'll sort of put my hands on 9 and 3. And this is just something that that I've dealt with since I've been driving. I have two boys, one who is 15, and my wife and I have been speaking to him on how to interact with law enforcement. And we tell him that, you know, it's a very serious thing. It can save your life. And as Mr. Blenman said, it could have been me, right? We could have been one of the unfortunate ones in so many encounters that we've seen. So I definitely uh, it the advice that I learned was not the best, but I learned along the way. And I definitely agree with both of you on counseling, because I think some of the experiences that we have as Black people, right, are quite traumatic. And it would be great to sit before someone and really just pour everything out, right? So, and as you both mentioned, you can be a believer, but we have to get rid of that idea that because you are a believer, you don't need any counseling, right? Um, so, I agree with you both 100%.
I really liked that all three of you, of course, came to the consensus that counseling is important, because it's not only just, pertaining to people of color, but everyone. It benefits everyone. Counseling and mental health is such an avid role, I feel, when it comes to someone's cognitive development and also emotional development. If you have like inner demons that you haven't situated with, how are you portraying yourself to others? Are you not only hurting yourself, but are you hurting others? So I thought that was it was a very great point. And anyone who's watching, if you need to speak with someone, you have resources. We assure you, there's resources out there, and you can get, that help that you need. Of course.
This is in the back of your ID card.
Oh, yes. And if you're a Valencia student, there's a number on the back of your card for Baycare, and you can call them, and you have, I think, three sessions, I think you have with them. So there's that. But if you're not a Valencia student, it's okay. There's a bunch of services out there. There's a bunch of numbers you can call. There's services. So if you need that help, go get that help. We need you. Okay. So, moving on to our next question. Professor Ragland, what's one piece of advice that you want us to give our future generations?
I thought long and hard about this question. And I've been going back and forth. The thing that I thought about was showing empathy. And the reason why I thought about empathy was because, again, it's probably going back to our discussion on Black Lives Matter versus White Lives Matter. And I think part of this is due to the fact that there is no empathy. People don't understand what it is to live as a Black person. They don't understand how being in a society with a dominant race and culture, how that affects behavior. So when we see all of this, right, with Black Lives Matter, and we hear, oh, well, white lives matter too, we're not saying that it doesn't. The white lives matter. We're not saying that white lives don't matter. We're just saying that we matter. And that it would be great if there could be some understanding of being in our shoes. So for example, we're seeing all of these statues being toppled by protesters. And I think it's great. I really do, because these statues are symbols, right? Symbols of a period in time where Blacks were subjugated to white supremacy, right? And I know that there are people who are arguing and saying, well, that's cancel culture and you shouldn't take these statues away. But how long have Black people had to walk by these statues? How long have we had to look at these statues? It's been, for some statues, we're talking about over 100 years, right? So I would say for future generations, empathy would be the greatest thing. So when we speak about the tribulations of being a Black person, right? Someone can step out of themselves and step into the shoes of a Black person and say, wow, I didn't know it was like that, right? It would be the same for me to definitely show empathy to any other group, right? I don't know what it is to be Asian or Latinx, Hispanic. I don't know what it is to be part of the LGBTQ community, right? But when they are sharing their viewpoints about their experiences, then I want to take myself out of me and put myself into their shoes and say, wow, I didn't know, right? So I would say show empathy.
I don't know if I am the future generation because I'm like in between, but I'm going to say this when my nephew gets older. I'm going to tell him stay woke and stay hungry. So stay hungry to keep researching and figuring out ways that you could help others, help the community, help balance this pandemic we call racism. And as a matter of fact, not balance it, but dismantle it. Stay woke because there are things that you don't know that it needs to be seen and it needs to be heard and you can share it. I mean, the power, I think about this, the power of social media is crazy. We, instead of using it to post some like stupid stuff, use it to share information. Like I'm a writer and I write for the Odyssey. I write about injustice and why it's 130 something days that Breonna Taylor's cops have not been arrested. Stay hungry for the information and stay woke that you need to share it. That's my advice.
My advice is similar to Donasia's. Stay fighting a good fight. Like she said, the technology right now is so important. We didn't have that back in the days where we can just, I seen Twitter do your thing so much. Somebody does something, Twitter, do your thing, and then they lose their job, or they comes to light what they're doing is wrong. So keep fighting the good fight. I don't want it to be just something we're doing now because it's the end thing. It has to be the right thing. It has to be the end thing for forever. You know what I'm saying? I've seen a lot of posts on Breonna Taylor, everybody, we have to call the cops, get the cops arrested. Why we get the cops arrested, I did that, so on and so forth. And then a new word, entanglement, came out. And then I stopped seeing less of, you know what I'm saying, get the cops arrested, and I seen a lot of entanglement jokes. So we have to keep doing that. You know what I'm saying? We can't take our foot off the gas. We have to keep going and keep going and going and going. So I feel like that's what we need to do, especially this generation or the new generation that's going to come with more technology. Just keep going. Just keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you so much for all of that advice. I really think it's important to educate and not just move on, but to move forward. Donasia said this a while back when she was telling us about the Freeish series, and she's like, we don't want to move on, we want to move forward. So take the education that we've retained and retain it and use it every day, and make sure that we continue fighting this fight. And then we have our very last question, and it is, are Black people really free? Donasia, go for it.
I was going to use the word entanglement too. We are in an entanglement with freedom right now. We are in entanglement with freedom, but I do say, let's detangle that. Let's detangle what freedom really means. We're there, but not there yet. Like, there's still work that needs to be done. There's still so much we can do. So we're free, but just not yet. Let's keep going so we can really work for freedom and discover this is really what freedom is.
Physically, but not systemically. Do we have more freedom? Yes. But are we truly free? Nah. I mean, physically, we are no longer in bondage. However, the system, the laws, judicial system, so on and so forth, the new Jim Crow era, so on and so forth, it was created to us as to keep us as systematic slaves. There is a saying that the system wasn't created for our success, but our downfall. From mass incarceration to the school to the prison pipeline, we see how systematically Black people are at a disadvantage. We see it in the policing numbers. There are far less Black people in the United States than there are white people. Yet we have the highest incarceration rates. Doesn't add up. We might not physically have the shackles on, but we are governed by unfair laws, policing, and education. We are still at a deficit. We are still treated as second-class citizens. So it's more often that you see a person of color being brutalized by police officers than a Caucasian individual or individuals. So physically, we are free, but we still got some more work to do.
Thank you very much. I agree with both Mr. Blenman and Donasia. When we think about freedom, and when I think about freedom, I think about happiness. And we have to think, are Black people happy? To be certain, we've come a very long way, right? From the 1600s up until this place where we are. We've made a lot of strides, absolutely. However, as Mr. Blenman said, our justice system and the injustice that we see with Blacks versus whites, where it's by far it's not equal. When we think about education, for example, our Black and brown kids hurt more, and that achievement gap is still pretty large. When we think about housing, there's still discrimination. So are we really free? I'll jump on with Blenman on this, and physically, yeah, we're not in shackles. However, systemically, according to the institutions of our society, we have a long way to go.
Well, I can see the general consensus is, we are free physically, but when it comes down to the whole free as a whole, there's certain parts where we're still needing to work on it, and hopefully we'll get to that full freedom real soon. So I just want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your information and the knowledge you've given us. This is greatly appreciated. This series is very important to us at Student Development. I mean, this is Donasia's baby. So props to Donasia for, of course, creating this wonderful season. So our final episode will be coming towards the end of July. So our final episode will be talking about allyship. So everyone, please stay tuned for that final episode. We're going to be having amazing resources and another amazing conversation with another group of amazing panelists. Have a great day, everyone.